are back at the Chandeleur Islands. Very happy to be back here. This time we're going to do some wading. Didn't really have a chance to do that a couple weeks ago. So we found a kind of sandy bay here, and we're going to see. Oh yeah, there's a lot of bait here, stuff getting chased around. I like to do the full get up with when I'm wading with waders and wading belt, but it is quite a lengthy process to get dressed, so versus just stepping out of the boat. Yeah, so the water's not quite as clear as I think it was over by the New Harbor Islands, huh? I have that subwalk on it, okay, twitch bait. Top, yeah. Nice. First cast again. It's a good one, huh?
I hope to keep it like a 16 or 17.
About a 15, 14. Nice trout. Yeah, that's a 15 there. Nice. A lot of mullet in here. Ton of mullet. Anything from like a big 12, 14-inch mullet, maybe longer. Some of them are huge. To some that are like 6 inches. And we saw so much bait coming out here. There were, I think, probably mackerel chasing bait, and a lot of birds on that. A lot of life out here by the barrier islands. I'll see what a subwalk does. This is my new medium light St. Croix Mojo inshore. This is my first medium light rod for trout, and I definitely cast well. So I'm really curious to see how it fights a fish. I have my 13 Fishing Concept C as the reel on here. There's a fish. He hit it a couple of times. A smallish one. So, wow, that was like almost my second cast with the subwalk twitch bait. That subwalk is really good bait. Action on that thing is incredible. Ooh, there's a big stingray. Just a really big stingray just swam past me, so watch out. There's one.
Yeah, I saw it right when it hit you.
Small one again. I don't know. No, I don't think he's even a keeper. Well, he probably is. Yeah, it would be. He's gonna be a non-keeper here in a second. But I don't get him hooked on my grabber, boga grip. Well, that was a release. You know, I've done a fair amount of wade fishing for the other kind of trout, where you stand in a river and the ice is floating past. But I haven't done a lot of wade fishing in saltwater. I did some years ago down in the Sarasota area of Florida. But this trip on the Chandeleur Islands is the first time I've wade fished in Louisiana waters. Now, the last wading trip that I was on was in the Laguna Madre out of Port Mansfield, Texas. And it was a tough place to wade. It made wading here in the Chandeleur Islands look like Disney World, because we were wading in this bottom that was kind of boggy, not like muddy where the mud comes up with your boots, but couldn't get a good purchase on the bottom, and so sometimes I felt like I was spending more time keeping my balance than I was casting. But when you're catching all those big speckled trout, doesn't matter. Except we weren't.
I just never knew it was supposed to be this hard. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Paul, you know.
The wind was blowing like 20 miles an hour, 25 mile an hour all the time. I guess seeing these coming into Port Mansfield should have given me a warning about that. And it was a super moon, and the water was heating up too fast, yada, yada, yada. But I caught trout. They were just like 15-inch trout, maybe 16-inch trout. I think I caught a 2.5 pounder. That was the biggest trout I caught in that trophy trout habitat. And I caught a lot more redfish than I wanted to catch. I caught more redfish than I ever catch in Louisiana fishing for speckled trout. This time I got you. This time I got your hook set, baby. You are mine this time. Third one. This time I'm getting you in. They're just redfish, but I'm tired of losing them anyway. What are you doing down there? Come out of there. Stay down, man. Don't come up. Oh my gosh. Stingray. Well, I am definitely freaking stingray. I am not going to mess with you. I'm going to cut you off, buddy. Got hit there. There we go. That feels like a good one. That feels like a good one. Feels bigger than the others. No, it's not a big one, but a 14 or 15. Oh, he's gone. Yep, here's the stingray right here. This is the one where you could step on it. Where you step on it and you get stung. Get stuck by it. I'm gonna stay away from him. There's one. The jumper, yeah, decent fish. So I want to talk a little bit about wade fishing. You know, when my previous experience fishing for the other kind of trout, like steelhead trout, really specifically, you know, in that case, you're in a river and the water's moving pretty fast. And so because the water is moving pretty fast, the trout are somewhat stationary. You know, they're say in the rapids, they're behind some rocks, and they just kind of stay around there. And so you don't want to move because the fish aren't moving. So you stand there and stationary, and you cast in. And of course, you wouldn't want to be in a boat just bulldozing down through the rapid. That's crazy. So wade fishing makes a lot of sense there. But when you're in a saltwater environment like here at the Chandeleur Islands, why do you want to get out of your boat? I mean, you get out of your boat and there's sharks in there, there's stingrays, there might be jellyfish. You got to hold on to all your tackle. You could drop everything. You got to handle the fish. You're going to lose some fish just trying to get them hooked up once you get them to you. So it's definitely more difficult. Plus, you know, you got fish on your stringer hanging there. Sharks come along and eat the fish off your stringer. So what are you going to do? I mean, we saw a 5-foot shark today swimming past us. We were in the boat at the time, actually, but we could have been in the water waiting when that thing went swimming past us.
Come on, be a trout.
I can see the cork staying down. Looks like a, ooh, it's a redfish. There we go.
That's a trout.
Trout. I saw it come up and hit it.
Ooh, that's a good trout.
I got him on the top. He's not like super big.
I don't know, John. That's a nice sized trout.
Got him on the top.
Oh, okay.
So he's got a lot of leverage.
So what were you,
Nice trout though.
you're still doing that
Yep.
sub walk or whatever?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a nice trout. Nice trout.
Rapala subwalk has been very effective today for trout. Like this guy. Not huge trout. We're not getting big trout today. It's a nice sized trout. 15 inches. That's a big trout.
That was a big trout.
Dang. Where are we going?
Huh?
We couldn't go anywhere. There's one.
All
There's a
right.
fish.
That's a trout, John. We're gonna make it a trout. Oh, look at this is a red.
Okay, we got into a school of reds.
Yeah.
Oh well, this cork. You know, okay, that's what that cork that was here had a redfish on it. I guarantee you, and that was the school of redfish.
Yeah, you got a red.
Because the cork is gone now.
Yeah.
Well, this will be my first redfish on a medium light action rod. David's on one too. Yeah, see the cork just popped up over there?
Yeah, that too.
Yep. Oh man, you know what? I don't know if I can turn mine. Just gonna go.
I may have gotten that.
Oh, they want to swim together here. I want to get.
Cause one big screw up. Get out. I'm gonna take this good pin.
I want to get my lure back.
That is enough. You are not going anywhere, big boy.
Sure, mine is cookie cutter of that size.
Yeah. No, you're not gonna break this rod. No, sir.
That's not a big one. That's a bull right there.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe right around that. He's right there. He might be tired enough to get. Okay, grab him. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you had on that too.
Yeah, I didn't want to lose that thing. That's why I didn't want to force it too much. There it is. Pretty big one. It is 7 pounds.
That's a keeper, huh?
Yeah. So to effectively explore this question of wade fishing versus boat fishing, we have to eliminate certain things. And let's start with the type of boat, because there are some kind of types of boats that are just not going to compare favorably against wade fishing. And that may be because they have a lot of hull slap, meaning when the water washes against them, it makes a lot of noise. Maybe the boat, because of its construction, when you move around in it, it's very loud, makes big sounds. The boat may have no stealth possibility because it's too heavy to be poled or easily pushed along. Also, some boats are too high in the water. So that means if you're drift fishing, you get too much purchase from the wind and it just pushes the boat too fast. And then you're dragging socks and you get all that complication. And also some boats would have too high freeboard, too high gunnels it actually interferes with the way you move your rod. And so you're kind of limited if you're fishing some advanced artificial bait techniques. So those type of boats, you really can't compare favorably against wade fishing because they just have some real disadvantages. But what if the boat is a little poling skiff or a small flats boat? Reason to have a skiff, man. It's like walking the dog. The only strike against it in that whole list that I just went through is that you could still make noise if you don't move carefully around in the boat. But otherwise, you have a very good platform to work from. So then the question really becomes, why would you step out of a poling skiff and into the water to wade fish? And as a person who has fished mostly from boats and for the last 5-6 years from a small flats boat, like a sort of poling skiff, that question's very relevant to me. Wow, he's taking drag. Oh yeah, nice trout. Beautiful. This is a K Wiggler on a jig, 1/8 ounce jig.
Oh, well then you're gonna make me want to throw up.
There we go. So, okay, first trout on a jig. That's nice. So the two main arguments that I hear from the big trout fishermen in regard to why you should get out of your boat is that you have more stealth and that you can fish slower. And they believe that these two aspects will give you more success with big speckled trout. Now, there's not an agreement about that for the smaller speckled trout, but let's just talk about for the big speckled trout. And I don't consider myself a successful big trout fisherman, so I'm going to take the opinion of the guys who are. So let's set that as a baseline, saying, okay, it's a fact. You're going to catch bigger speckled trout if you're wading. However, it's obviously not a statement that you can always apply. Because if you're fishing for the big trout along the jetties in Venice, well, you're not going to be wade fishing for obvious reasons. Safety for one, and also I would say access to the fish, because there are fish, there are big speckled trout in deeper water as well. It's not just in wadeable water. So, for instance, in Louisiana, the top 3 fish caught in Louisiana, speckled trout, was Lake Hermitage, Lake Pontchartrain, and the Wrigley's Lake Bourne area. And all of these were caught from a boat. These are just not wade-friendly places. So we can't just say categorically that wade fishing is a better way to catch big speckled trout than from a boat. So that helps us drill down even more into this question. It becomes a circumstantial situation where wade fishing is the best option for big speckled trout. Now, is it true that currently a high percentage of big speckled trout are being caught wading? The answer is yes. And where are those fish being caught? On the Texas coast. So it's this whole, Matagorda complex and down in Laguna Madre. These are all shallow water bays. And if it's anything like my experience, with all that wind and the dirty water, fishing downwind, and you might be catching fish in shin deep water. Well, that's going to be a really tough environment to boat fish from. So, yes, then it must be true that since the bigger fish are coming from that environment, then wade fishing is more effective at catching big speckled trout. Now, over in Florida, interestingly, from what I can tell, the big trout fishermen over there are using the poling skiffs and the small shallow water boats, shallow draft boats to target the big speckled trout. And this is common, right? So if you're bone fishing or permit fishing on the flats, you're poling a skiff and you're sight fishing for them. And that brings up an interesting discussion about the boat fishing versus wade fishing. If you're fishing where whatever your target species is, and it's very scattered over a flat, then simply walking and wading where you really can't see anything, you have very limited visibility when you're down standing on the bottom. You can't see the fish. So sight fishing is not a good companion for wade fishing, and therefore on these flats where you're targeting bonefish and permit, it apparently is not the best strategy because I don't see people using that. So let me give you a few observations from today, my first wade fishing trip on the Chandeleur Islands versus the boat fishing that I typically do. And I did both today, boat fishing and wade fishing. And I caught speckled trout, both wade fishing and boat fishing. First of all, if you have multiple fishermen and they get out of the boat, they can cover so much more water than if they were together in the boat. I mean, that's obvious. And that's really helpful if you're trying to find trout. I mean, that is very good. Number 2, if you do find trout, you just don't move. You can just choose not to move. It's a little more complicated in the boat. You got to put an anchor down, or you got to use a spot lock. And if you are in really shallow water, that spot lock makes noise. Even a power pole is going to make a little bit of noise going up and down. You might be better off with just a sticking pole if you want to do real stealth. But yes, I believe that the stealth aspect is greater when you're wading than when you're fishing. It's just easier to make noise when you're walking around a boat. Noise that's unnatural. You really have to be careful. You have to really think about that. Just thinking about being very quiet, walking very quietly. You may even have to take your shoes off so you're walking barefoot. I noticed that a number of fishermen put the sea deck foam down on their hulls of their skiffs, and then they walk barefoot. So that's even quieter. So it is possible to be very quiet in a poling skiff, but you have to put some effort into it. And then when you're in the environment, you're standing in the water wade fishing, you are a more natural part of the environment than a boat is, by far. And the noises that you make are probably more natural and maybe less intimidating for spooky fish. But there's also maybe some downsides to wading as well. I'm not sure if when you're scouting for fish, when you're trying to find fish, I don't know that it's better to do that wading, or if it's better to do that drifting, and as long as you can drift relatively slowly in your boat. So again, if you have a very flat boat, you don't have a lot of purchase, that the wind can grab the boat and push it hard. Now that might be a point for argument. So you can put in the comments if you disagree with that comment or anything I'm saying. Please feel free to comment. And then the other thing is, it's like kind of an obvious thing too. You stepped into the water. Well, there are hazards in the water. I've already talked about some of those hazards. And they're very visible. You've seen them on this video. I mean, we saw a 5-foot shark. So there are hazards. There's also Vibrio venomicus, and you are in contact with the water a lot more when you're standing in it, especially when you're in some remote place like the Chandeleur Islands. I mean, you probably could get help because if there are a lot of fishermen around, but they're going to have to fly a helicopter out there to get you, and it's going to be a really big deal. So, don't expect this to be the last time you're going to hear about wade fishing versus fishing from my poling skiff, because I am going to attempt to explore the whole wade fishing concept and technique more in the future, especially where I have a chance. I mean, I can't, there's a lot of places I fish, I can't do that. It's much too boggy, you sink up to your waist. It's just pointless. But there are some places, especially when you get out to the Barrier Islands, where you can wade fish. And so I'm really going to try to do that some more this summer. And this summer will be a perfect time to do it, because I'm going to be spending some time out at the islands, the Barrier Islands on the Louisiana coast. Well, we didn't get the big trout we were looking for today, but we still caught fish, and we learned even more about the Chandeleur Islands. Tried some new areas, and so every time builds on for the next. Hey, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe and share, and I will talk to you in a week or two.